Welcome to Into the Darkness, where we dive into the most spine-chilling and captivating true crime stories from around the world. Each week, we take you deep into the heart of the darkest mysteries and the most notorious criminals. Our detailed narratives, gripping voiceovers, and vivid visuals will immerse you in the thrilling world of true crime. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of crime enthusiasts. Get ready to uncover the truth, face the terror, and remember, every story hides a shadow. Now, let's dive into the darkness.
Shackles of Despair. In the blistering summer of 2025, the United States was a nation on the edge. The president had mysteriously disappeared, leaving a power vacuum that plunged the country into chaos. Texas, gripped by an unprecedented heat wave, became a hellscape of desperation. The relentless sun scorched the land, turning streets into molten rivers of asphalt. Buildings shimmered in the oppressive heat, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning rubber and decay. In the midst of this inferno, a new law was enacted that criminalized homelessness. The government declared that those without homes were a blight on society, to be rounded up and removed. Now hunters patrolled the streets with ruthless efficiency, snatching the homeless from their makeshift shelters and throwing them into the back of sweltering vans. The cityscape was a grim tapestry of despair, with shadows of suffering lurking in every alley and beneath every overpass. Jake Marlowe was once a beacon of hope in a darkening world. A dedicated social worker with a loving family, Jake's life was a testament to compassion and service. But the economic collapse had stripped him of everything. His job was lost, his family fractured, and his home repossessed. Now Jake was one of the many homeless wandering the sun-baked streets of Dallas, a ghost of his former self. Despite the relentless heat and the constant threat of capture, Jake's resolve to help others never waned. He became a leader among the homeless, organizing small groups to share resources and watch each other's backs. They sought refuge in the shadows, moving from one dilapidated building to another, always one step ahead of the police. Jake's once bright eyes were now hardened, his skin weathered by the sun, but his spirit remained unbroken. The heat wave showed no signs of abating. Temperatures soared to record highs, and the city's infrastructure began to buckle under the strain. Power outages became common, and clean water was a rare commodity. The streets were littered with the detritus of a collapsing society: abandoned cars, broken storefronts, and the occasional body, lifeless under the merciless sun. Jake and his group huddled in the shade of an old, crumbling warehouse, its walls offering little respite from the heat. They pooled their scant resources, sharing sips of tepid water and bites of stale bread. Each day was a battle for survival, and the nights offered no relief, with the air remaining hot and suffocating. One blistering afternoon, as Jake's group scavenged for supplies, the police descended upon them. The raid was swift and brutal. Batons cracked against bone, and the cries of the captured echoed through the streets. Jake fought to protect his friends, but he was quickly overpowered, handcuffed, and thrown into the back of a sweltering van. Through the barred windows, he saw the frightened faces of those he had tried to help, now destined for the same fate. The internment camp was a sprawling complex in the middle of the Texas desert, a place where the sun's fury was unchecked. Surrounded by high barbed wire fences and patrolled by armed guards, the camp was a vision of hell. The ground was cracked and barren, the air thick with dust and the smell of human suffering. The prisoners were herded from the transport vehicles like cattle, their shackled feet dragging through the dirt. Jake was thrust into this nightmare, assigned a narrow bunk in an overcrowded barrack. The heat inside was stifling, the air heavy with the stench of sweat and despair. The barracks were dark, with only small, barred windows that let in slivers of burning sunlight. The walls, once white, were now grimy and stained, and the floors were littered with the detritus of broken spirits. The camp was run by Warden Crowe, a man whose cold eyes reflected the cruelty he wielded. Crowe, a former military officer, now worked for the profit-hungry oligarchs who owned the camp. His methods were brutal, his demeanor unyielding. The guards under his command were equally cruel, treating the prisoners with contempt and violence. Jake quickly learned the harsh realities of life in the internment camp. The prisoners were forced to work under the blazing sun, performing backbreaking labor for the camp's corporate owners. Those who collapsed from exhaustion were beaten and left to bake in the heat. The infirmary was a grim place, where the sick and injured received minimal care. Many never left, their bodies carted away in the dead of night. Despite the cruelty, Jake found a way to endure. He formed alliances with other prisoners, including Sam, a former teacher, Maria, a single mother, and Ben, a young man who had lost his entire family. Together, they shared stories, resources, and hope. They became a family of sorts, united by their suffering and their will to survive. Days turned into weeks, and the relentless heat showed no mercy. The camp became a pressure cooker of desperation and despair. The prisoners, pushed to their limits, began to fracture. Fights broke out over scraps of food and precious drops of water. The guards, ever watchful, responded with brutal force, their batons and tasers a constant threat. Jake's group clung to their humanity, supporting one another through the darkest times. Jake's leadership and compassion shone through, giving his friends a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless place. He listened to their fears, shared in their pain, and inspired them to keep going, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Jake's spirit, though battered, was unbroken. He began to organize secret meetings with trusted inmates, discussing the possibility of rebellion. They met in the dead of night in the darkest corners of the camp, speaking in hushed tones. Jake's leadership and determination inspired others. He taught them to communicate through coded messages and to gather makeshift weapons from the camp's debris. The plan for the uprising took shape over weeks of meticulous preparation. They identified key targets: the armory, the communication center, and the warden's office. They recruited more prisoners, spreading hope and determination like wildfire. Jake knew that their window of opportunity was small, and the risks were immense. But the alternative, continuing to live under such inhuman conditions, was unbearable. On a night hotter than any other, the revolt began. The prisoners, armed with their makeshift weapons and fueled by desperation, struck with precision. The camp erupted into chaos as prisoners overpowered guards, seized weapons, and took control of key areas. Jake led the charge, his heart pounding with fear and determination. The warden and his guards fought back fiercely, but the prisoners' resolve was stronger. The fighting was brutal and bloody. Jake's group faced overwhelming odds, but their unity and determination pushed them forward. They moved through the camp like a storm, dismantling the oppressive regime piece by piece. The warden's office was the final target, and Jake led the assault, his eyes burning with a mix of rage and hope. After hours of intense combat, the prisoners emerged victorious. The camp's administration was overthrown, and the guards who survived fled into the desert. The prisoners stood together in the dawn light, exhausted but free. Jake, now a symbol of hope and resilience, addressed the group, promising that their fight was far from over. The former prisoners faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives and society. They moved into the city where Jake, now a leader, worked tirelessly to organize and provide for the group. They occupied abandoned buildings, turning them into homes, and began to cultivate gardens in the barren land. Jake's vision was clear: a society based on justice, equality, and compassion. Jake's leadership was tested as they faced resistance from remnants of the old regime. The oligarchs, desperate to regain control, hired mercenaries to attack the new community. Jake and his group fought back, defending their newfound freedom with determination and unity. Jake's leadership was not without its challenges. The community, though united, was fragile. The memories of the camp were still fresh, and the scars ran deep. Jake worked tirelessly to heal those wounds, fostering a sense of unity and purpose. He organized councils to address the needs of the community, ensuring that everyone had a voice. The oligarchs, though defeated, were not idle. They plotted in the shadows, seeking to reclaim their lost power. Jake's group faced constant threats and sabotage, but they stood firm, their resolve unshakable. Jake knew that their fight for justice was far from over, but he remained steadfast, a beacon of hope in a world still shrouded in darkness. The final confrontation came when the oligarchs launched a full-scale assault on the community. Jake, with the help of his closest allies, led the defense. The battle was fierce and bloody, but the community's resolve and unity prevailed. The oligarchs were defeated, their power shattered. With the oligarchs defeated, Jake and his community began to establish a new government. They implemented policies to address the homeless and opioid crises, creating shelters, treatment centers, and job programs. Jake's leadership ushered in an era of social democracy, where the needs of the people were prioritized over profit. Jake's journey from a homeless man to a leader of a new society became a symbol of hope and resilience. His efforts transformed the community, providing opportunities for the disenfranchised and restoring dignity to those who had been marginalized. The scorching heat wave of 2025 became a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of unity and compassion. In the end, Jake stood before the community he had helped to build, looking out over the thriving gardens and bustling streets. The sun, once a symbol of oppression, now shone down on a society reborn from the ashes of despair. Jake's story was one of resilience, hope, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The fight was not over, but the future was brighter than ever. The scars of the past remained, but they served as a reminder of what had been overcome and what could be achieved. The once oppressive sun now felt like a gentle caress on Jake's weathered skin. He looked around at the thriving community where people worked together, laughed together, and built a future together. The gardens flourished, green and vibrant against the backdrop of the rebuilt city. Children played in the streets, their laughter a testament to the new dawn that had broken over them. Jake's journey had been one of suffering and struggle, but it had also been one of hope and triumph. He had led his people out of the darkest depths of despair and into a new era of light and possibility. The internment camps were a distant memory, their horrors replaced by the beauty of a society that valued every human life. As Jake walked through the bustling streets, he was greeted with smiles and nods of gratitude. He was a leader, a hero, but most importantly, he was a symbol of what could be achieved when people stood together against oppression. The future was theirs to shape, and Jake knew that they would build something truly beautiful, something that would endure for generations to come.